What's going on, everyone? Welcome into a live Broncos Breakdown. Matthew Peterson here, getting you guys ready for the latest news and rumors, including some trade buzz. Believe me, I thought the wide receiver trade buzz conversations were done, but a new ESPN article somewhat says otherwise, so we're going to check out that report. Plus, we got some other news items to hit on, along with rookie minicamp winners and losers. Winners and losers from OTAs, minicamp are always one of my favorite off-season segments because you get to have a little bit of fun with it because, let's be honest, there's no real hardcore loser, but maybe you got some actual winners coming out of a non-padded practice. Now, before we jump into all of that, we're going to let the audience build up a little bit, let everyone click on the push notification. So let me know where you are watching from today. Shout out your city. Put it down in the chat. I'll be giving shout-outs to everyone who lets me know where they are tuning in from. We are live here in Dallas, Texas, the headquarters of Chat Sports. Producer Matthew McCullough and I hanging out with you guys for the next hour or so. It's always one of my favorite hours of the week, getting to talk shop and talk Broncos football with you all. So let's see. We got Timur tuning in from Salina, Kansas. Eddie's up in Greeley. Hope it's smelling good today for you, Eddie. Let's see where everyone else is tuning in from. Mark is in Fountain, Colorado. I'm Faye is in Missouri, but a Bronco fan for life, baby. Behind enemy lines, best of luck to you. John is tuning in from L.A. Antonio is in Guadalajara, Mexico. We got our first international fan. Thanks for hanging out with us, Antonio. Trevor's in Idaho. The Lord of Liberty's in California. We've got a UK. Hello, all from England. Lambo, UK. What's going on, man? Mark's in the UK as well. You guys can go over and to find your nearest pub and talk Broncos football. Niagara Falls, Canada, from Jared. Devin's in South Dakota. Lori's in Denver. Martin's in Texas. Ramon Rivera tuning in from Kansas City. Keep getting those cities in the chat right now. It's always great to see just how big and wide Broncos Country stretches. We've gone all the way from Guadalajara to the UK. So let's see if we can get someone out in the far east. Price, Utah, from Christopher. Steve's in one of my favorite cities in the U.S., Knoxville, Tennessee. Go Vols. Go Vols indeed, Steve. I'm trying to plan out a trip to Knoxville this year. I think I'm going to go back for the Georgia game. James is in Houston. Martin, born in Denver. Mr. Me in Seattle. Go Broncos. So keep getting those cities in the chat. Let me know where you are all tuning in from. Now, I understand we are probably getting, this is putting it lightly, a bit tired of this conversation over and over again because I know I am at least giving this conversation. So with that being said, do you think the Broncos will end up trading a wide receiver? We're past the draft at this point, so it seemed like this was behind us. I went ebbs and flows. I thought they wouldn't. I thought they would. I thought they wouldn't. I thought they would. Back and forth with Jeudy and Sutton. Ultimately, they hold on to both players. But the pick of Marvin Mims has perked some, NFL insiders' ears up a little bit, going, you move up to get a wide receiver. Does that mean one of your other wide receivers is available for a trade? Definitely was the case. Denver was fielding calls. There's real no doubt about that. They did not materialize or, make anything of those calls into a hard, cold trade, but does not mean it is absolutely over. So do you think Denver is going to end up trading, let's say before week one of Jerry Jeudy, Courtland Sutton, or heck, even Tim Patrick? I'm going to go with no, but I can't rule it out. You know what I mean? I definitely would not be shell-shocked if I get a notification that Courtland Sutton has been traded, but I just don't think it's very likely at this point with the draft over now, and I'll expand on those thoughts later in today's live show. But let me know what you guys think here as Mike is tuning in from Davenport, Iowa. I am Frey. No, we are keeping every receiver. If we trade, it'll be KJ Hamler or Washington. I don't know who's calling to inquire for KJ Hamler's availability. I am sure if someone made an offer for Hamler, Denver would likely consider it. If they're only going to give you a future 7th round pick, maybe it's worth just holding on to Hamler to see if he can get that speed back and be that deep threat receiver they picked out of Penn State. But if someone offers you anything close to even a 6th rounder, yeah, it's probably worth it at that point, especially with Denver not having, bukus of picks next year. They traded away a 2nd to New Orleans. They got a 3rd from the Saints, but then they traded a 3rd over to Seattle to get Riley Moss. So every pick helps for sure. Eddie says probably if a playoff team has an injury and needs a wide receiver. Mid-season trade, that's a whole different, whole different scenario right there. If Denver's not off to a good start, trade deadline rolls around, they're below 500, and a team offers a second for Courtland Sutton, yeah, they're probably going to, capitalize on that at that point. But before week one, I don't see it happening. James T saying if KJ and Sutton will be possibly, again, what I said for Hamler, I'll echo it again. If anyone makes a call, I'm sure they'll consider it. I don't know who's making a call, though. As for Courtland Sutton, Denver wants like a second rounder, it sounds like, for him. At least that was the case at one point. I don't know, second rounder for a guy with 4 touchdowns the last 2 years combined and decent contract with the, decent base salary. I don't know a ton of teams lining up to make that deal. So if Denver's not dying to move on from any of these players, they're going to sit back and go, make us an offer we can't refuse, and then we'll accept it. Now, speaking of rookie minicamp, we got our first glimpse of the rookies. Did not have any, Bronco face on the helmet. I don't know the best way to call it, insignia. But let me know what your favorite pick is from this draft class. There's not a whole lot to pick from, so it's not too difficult. I'll run it through the list again for you guys. It starts with Marvin Mims, then Drew Sanders, then Riley Moss, then J.L. Skinner, then Alex Forsyth. You can make a fair argument for all 5 guys, actually, right? I mean, Marvin Mims, it's easy to say because he was the first selection, and he's got crazy getaway speed. Drew Sanders, I think, is the best player of the bunch right there. I thought he could have gone round 2. So for them to find him mid-round 3, yeah, I can get behind that. And then for the next one, Riley Moss, Denver clearly likes him a lot, or else they wouldn't have traded away a future third to move back into day 2 to get him. J.L. Skinner might be an under-the-radar pick, but the Boise State safety, if he didn't tear his pec before the combine, he definitely would have gone a lot earlier in the draft. So Denver got a steal, in my opinion, late day 3. And then we landed Alex Forsyth, who actually probably has the best chance of being a week 1 starter, despite being their last pick in this draft class, just because the center position is open for grabs and, up in the air right now, unlike some other spots where those players were drafted. So let me know who your favorite pick was from this draft class. I'm going to go with Drew Sanders. I just love Drew Sanders coming out of the draft, and I wanted to see Denver go out and get another linebacker who has some pass rush upside, but also can be a fan favorite and a staple and a building block in the middle of this defense for years to come. A little bit like a Danny Trevathan, if you will, right? Not the same type of player, but, that type of, or like a Brandon Marshall, right? Building from the inside. I like Drew Sanders in that role for this team. Let me know what you guys are saying. Mims from Eddie. I'm Frey. Really like Skinner. J.L. Skinner's going to be a good player. I do believe that. I think he's going to be in the NFL for a handful of seasons at least. The Bronco kid going with Alex Forsyth. Hey, he very well could be a week 1 starter. I'm not going to say no to that. Gary going Drew Sanders. I'm with you, Gary. The Bronco kid, Drew Sanders, could be the next Randy. Okay. We got some big comps going out here now. James T, I can't wait. Riley Moss, training camp and learning from PS2. When Denver drafted Riley Moss, I addressed the elephant in the room. The Broncos have the unicorn, the white cornerback. And I don't know, they asked him about that during rookie minicamp, which I thought was a bit bizarre to bring up. Like, actually say that quiet part out loud to him. Like, hey, let's bring race into this, and you're a white corner. How weird is that? But he was like, I don't know what to tell you. I'm good at my job. And I hope he is, because I hope Denver, gets a lot out of a player they more or less spent 2 third-round picks on. David saying Drew Sanders. Fact, Isma, Drew Sanders was a first-round pick. I mean, some people like Drew Sanders more than Jack Campbell, who Detroit selected in round 1. So if Drew Sanders ends up being the best linebacker in this entire draft class, to find him in round 3, you're going to love what you're paying him, which is a cheap rookie contract for the next 4 seasons. Now, if you got any questions at all, get those questions in the chat right now. Use hashtag Broncos or you can super chat if you like the free content we're doing here at the Broncos Breakdown. You want to, go a little above and beyond, be the MVP of today's live show. Super chats definitely go a long way to help support the channel. They are always greatly appreciated, and we never turn them down. But if you're unable to super chat, no harm, no foul. Hashtag Broncos and producer Tex will get those questions on screen as he sees fit. Make sure to like the video, by the way, if you have not already. We got 80 people hanging out with us here, 17 likes. That is a bit embarrassing. Honestly, it's a bit rude. I don't go to your house and keep my shoes on and walk all over your beautiful carpet and not like the house when I walk in. It's inconsiderate. So hit that thumbs up button if you have not already. I am Frey already getting his hashtag Broncos in the chat right now. We're going to start today's live show when we get to, say, 30 likes. We're 12 away. If we can get to 30 likes, we'll kick off today's live show, and this is what we have on tap for you all. The latest news and rumors, including some trade buzz. I didn't want to talk about it, but when Bill Barnwell at ESPN has a whole article about it, I'm not doing my job, right? And I've got to relay the latest news and rumors to you all, plus some rookie minicamp winners and losers, along with, like I just said, that live mailbag, hashtag Broncos, or if you super chat, guarantee your question gets on screen for everyone watching to see. We are 1 like away. There it is from 30 likes. Okay, next milestone we'll try to get to is 50 likes, but hey, let's start a live Broncos breakdown. You guys excited to see what the, behind the scenes is, if you will, to get this live production off the ground? So, green light for Mr. McCullough. Green light it is. Let's jump into a live Broncos breakdown. Coming up on today's show, we're going to talk about a new ESPN article that talked about Denver still potentially trading a wide receiver. Probably like many of you watching right now, don't click out just yet. I, too, am getting a bit tired of the wide receiver trade conversations, but we got some new information to relay to everyone. Plus, we got a signing to talk about. So let's jump into that. Welcome into the Broncos Breakdown by Chat Sports. Matthew Peterson here with Mike Klis' tweet about Denver re-signing running back Tyreek McAllister, an undrafted rookie last year. I said earlier this offseason, after the UDFA signings came in, if you want to make Denver's roster, be a running back, because that is definitely a spot where things are up for grabs. If Javonte Williams, which it sounds like he will be ready to go week 1, but if he's not, he's on the PUP list, and it's just Samaje Perine, there are a lot of open spots in the running back room. Now, Denver also made some additional moves I want to relay to everyone. Zach Stevens from DNVR tweeting out, the Broncos have cut 4 players. Darius Gaines, a corner, wide receiver Dallas Daniels, tight end Chris Leach, and running back Emmanuel Wilson. Now, Denver had their rookie minicamp, and it was crowded. I'm talking like 50 to 60 players. That's a lot of bodies for a team that only had 5 draft picks in a rookie minicamp. So they were not lonely, those 5 rookies selected in this past draft class. And now Denver is starting to trim the fat a little bit and get down to 90 man. Now make sure you are subscribed, because anytime your Broncos make any sort of move whatsoever, we keep you guys informed here at the channel. Plus, we're almost at 14,000 subscribers. Help a Broncos YouTuber out here. Hit that sub button if you have not already. Now, let's get into the meat and potatoes of today's show, and that is, could we still see a wide receiver traded? So like I said at the top of the video, ESPN wrote an article about a handful of moves that could be made across the NFL. There were some really interesting ones, some suggestions. I think it had Carson Wentz going to the Packers, which I don't know what Carson Wentz's future is, but I just hope it's not in Denver. But one of their, things to watch for would be, could Denver still end up trading a wide receiver? So we're going to break down the possibility of the Broncos moving on from Jerry Jeudy or Courtland Sutton, or even Tim Patrick, or I guess KJ Hamler, have your pick of the litter after the draft, because this was a draft where Denver moved up to get Marvin Mims. So anytime a team is already getting some trade buzz for their wide receivers and then they draft a wide receiver, you can bet all 31 other NFL GMs' ears are going to perk up a little bit and go, oh, does that mean one of these wide receivers are available? And if so, what's the going rate? Because we'll definitely do our fair share of due diligence and our homework on them. Now, I've got 2 big hurdles before we even look at ESPN's write-up on this that really make it tough for me to mentally, accept them trading a wide receiver at this point. One, Denver had a high asking price before the draft for Jerry Jeudy and Courtland Sutton. Never heard much conversations on Tim Patrick, so let's just focus on those two for now. No one met those prices, right? Otherwise, I don't think they'd be on the roster. I don't believe anyone offered a first for Jerry Jeudy. Otherwise, Jerry Jeudy would not be a Bronco right now. And it sounded like they wanted a second and maybe some more for Courtland Sutton, and those prices were not met. And as a result, Denver, who was not dying to trade one of those players away, did not get an offer they can't refuse. And so they are happy to hold on to what they believe are good players. And that's good practice by, head coach and GM there. The biggest hurdle I have is the second part here, which is the price for those two players that no one met before the draft has actually gone up. And this is why. If you trade a player after the draft, well, you're not going to have that player for the upcoming season, and the pick you're getting won't be for the next draft. So you're more or less losing out. Those are the words I'm looking for, on two players, right? Because the pick you get isn't until the next draft. So it's not like if you traded them before the draft, you can draft their replacement in April, and boom. While you traded one guy away, you got his replacement already because you picked him in April of 2023. No, you don't get a pick until 2024. So now you don't have the player for 2023, and you don't have the pick to use in 2023. And as a result, you're going to want more because you are missing out on two opportunities to have a player on your roster for this season. So if it used to cost a first for Jerry Jeudy after the draft, I think that actually only goes up, at least until week 1. Now, this is what Bill Barnwell from ESPN said. KJ Hamler might not make the team after battling injuries in each of his 3 pro seasons. But either way, Mims isn't coming in to be the 4th wideout. It would be a surprise if Courtland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, and Tim Patrick were all on the roster ahead of Mims come week 1. So I actually am 180 of Bill Barnwell, right? I would be surprised if any of them are traded at this point. Doesn't seem like there's a lot of interest on Tim Patrick. He's kind of a fan favorite. I don't know how well, league-wide he's known, but he's quietly maybe the best of the 3. Statistically, you can make the argument, but he's coming off an ACL injury, so he's not on a lot of people's radar. But, yeah, maybe Marvin Mims, wins the wide receiver 3 job ahead of, I don't really know who of those 3. I still like all those 3 guys more than Marvin Mims, at least in 2023. So if they're going to make a trade, well, they're going to get a better offer that they didn't get back in March and April. So I just don't see a trade happening. I'm not saying I'd be, blown away if it were to happen. Maybe a team ultimately decides to eat the price and go, let's make a move, right? We saw Zadarius Smith get traded to the Browns after the draft. So trades do happen after the draft, but I just don't see this one happening. Now, more from Barnwell and ESPN. For the Broncos, it might make sense to wait until training camp and see whether a team loses a star wide receiver to a season-ending injury. Jeudy would make sense for a team like the Giants, but Brian Daboll might need to evaluate their bevy of options in camp before making a more significant move for a potential number 1 wideout. Listen, if an injury happens, yes, that's going to dramatically change this, but injuries are the great unknown, right? You can't predict injuries, and sometimes you get a Jordy Nelson ACL tear, and other times you go through a preseason where a lot of teams didn't play their star players, and there might be an injury to a wide receiver or two like Tim Patrick last year. So we, of all people, should know injuries do happen in the preseason to key players. But what if you don't get a notable wide receiver going down? At least not a wide receiver that's so impactful to the team in 2023. They want to move on from what Denver would want for Jeudy or Sutton, which is a first or a second, right? If Denver last year, for losing Tim Patrick, I don't think they'd be running to the phones to trade away, even if they had a first or second, to go replace Patrick. It would require a big level wide receiver getting hurt, which that's not a guarantee. So with that being said, will the Broncos trade a wide receiver? The second half of this video is going to be about sort of playing out if they were to go down this path, which receiver would make the most sense. But let me know Y for yes or N for no. Now, with that being said, let's pretend that they do trade a wide receiver, right? Sean Payton, George Payton, meet in the war room and they're like, you know what? It's in the best interest of this team to move on from one of those three guys because we have Marvin Mims, and it just doesn't make a lot of sense to carry all these wide receivers when we want to be a run-first team anyway, and we're kind of short draft picks. Let's make a trade. We should have done it before, but let's not, compound a mistake, and let's make a move now. So with that said, before we look at which player would make the most sense, make sure you check out our awesome deal over at Fanatics, a Broncos 2-shirt combo deal, short sleeve and a long sleeve, which we all know that summer can be a bit of a tease sometimes in the Rockies. So if you still want to stay warm by also wear your favorite team, make sure you go to chatsports.com/DEN combo. Now, if it comes down to Sutton, Patrick, or Jeudy, which of these three would be the most team-friendly-ish to move on from? I think you'd be surprised, and I know a lot of my coworkers where we talked about this morning, Tim Patrick statistically is the best-ish of the bunch the last 2 years. He's got the most touchdowns, and it's not really all that close. Like, you can combine Sutton and Jeudy, and Patrick still has more touchdowns. Now, Jerry Jeudy, for what he's done in a lot fewer games, 7 fewer, 6 fewer compared to Sutton and Patrick, is right there with those guys. He's definitely Jeudy ahead of Sutton, but Patrick has him beat on touchdowns. So for, Jerry Jeudy, it depends on what you're going to get. And this is what I think their trade value is, right? Jeudy, at this point, I think they would want a first-round pick because you don't know what first-round pick you're getting. If you traded before the draft with the Patriots or with the Giants, you knew exactly what pick you were getting in the draft. Now, you don't. And GMs, they know that first-round picks, like after pick 20-ish, they're not as valuable as we like to think first-rounders are. So they might want an extra day 3 pick in there to get the trade to go through. Sutton, I think they're looking for day 2 picks, probably a second and maybe a third. That seems a bit rich, but maybe it's a second and a fifth or something, right? I think it's more than just one day 2 pick for Courtland Sutton. Is he worth that? That's a different conversation, but I think that's what Denver wants for Courtland Sutton. And then Tim Patrick, he's just not as notable as the other two, but I think he could go for 2 day 3 picks, right? I think a 4th and a 5th rounder with his contract coming off an ACL injury might get it done, although I'd be very resistant to give up Tim Patrick for a 4th and a 5th round pick. I think he is worth more than just that. If I had to pick one to move on from, I think Courtland Sutton would make the most sense just because you're getting a decent return and you're not losing your best receiver, right? Jerry Jeudy, you're going to get the most for, but you're probably going to use that first-round pick to then go draft another wide receiver. I kind of like what you have going with Jerry Jeudy so far. He ended the year on a high note last season, so I want to see that play out into 2023, whereas Courtland Sutton, kind of one of those, timeless stories. He got the bag, and then he disappeared. And 4 touchdowns in the last 2 seasons, it ain't cutting it for me. So if you had to pick one to trade, who would it be? Type the number down below in the comments section. Who you'd like to see get traded, knowing what you could get back in return. Give me that player down in the chat section. Make sure to subscribe if you have not already. I appreciate everyone for tuning in and hanging out with us here at the Broncos Breakdown. Nice voice crack to end the video. So hit that sub button if you love Denver Broncos football. All right, what do you guys think? Will the Broncos trade a wide receiver? So I got a couple 14s from Eddie Martinez. I agree. I mean, Courtland Sutton would make the most sense. What I probably should have said in the video, too, was team captain, right? He's a very important member of that locker room. So you're not just losing 4 touchdowns over the last 2 seasons. You're losing a pretty big mentor in that room, and you can't really replace that as easily as you might think. But it is a business, and feelings get hurt and decisions have to be made for what's in the best interest of the team. But don't just look at Courtland Sutton as, a guy who just has this many yards and this many receptions. He means a lot more to this team in ways that you can't just see on the stat sheet. So you'd be missing out on that. And I'm sure that's a big reason as to why Denver is not dying to trade Courtland Sutton, and they needed an offer they cannot refuse. Lord of Liberty says 10. Jeudy can bring a 1. That's a good point. Like, Judy's going to get you the most return. But it's going to be the hardest to replace. You know what I'm saying? Like, Jeudy, I think, has the most potential and is probably the best wide receiver going into 2023 on this roster. Now, you got a lot of other good receivers, so the ship won't sink without Jerry Jeudy. But I'd like to see what you could maybe have in Jeudy long term. I just, after the way he ended last season, I want to believe that 6-game stretch he had to close out the year can be stretched out over an entire 17-game season. And Denver's going to have a 1,500, 9-touchdown receiver in Jerry Jeudy, which, hey, he might not be Justin Jefferson ever in his career or something like that. But if he's going to be a 1,500-yard, 10-ish touchdown guy for the next 5-6 seasons, yeah, I'm going to want that kind of player on my football team. Okay, let's see what you guys are saying here. Chronic, both 10 and 14. If we can get a first and second, if Russ is done. Yeah, I mean, if you move on from those guys, you're definitely not helping Russell Wilson bounce back in year 2. But if you believe there's no bouncing back anyway and you might as well sell high, well, this would be the time to sell high for sure. Now, if you have not liked the video, by the way, as we have over 100 people watching, what are we doing? Hit that thumbs up button. We're at 43 likes. We're going to start the next segment once we get to 50 likes. So feel free to like today's video. Definitely goes a long way to, have the YouTube gods more or less push this video to more members of Broncos Country. 5 likes away. Once we get to 50, we'll jump into the next segment, which is all about rookie minicamp winners and losers. I like to have fun with this segment because there are no real winners or losers from rookie minicamp. It's just an excuse for me to tell you guys what all went down over at Dove Valley. So, one more like, oh, there it is. Bingo. Okay, so with that being said, let's jump into the next segment here on the show, rookie minicamp winners and losers. Welcome into the Broncos Breakdown by Chat Sports. Matthew Peterson here after rookie minicamp with some winners and losers. Now, quick disclosure here. It's rookie minicamp. There are no real winners or losers. This is more or less an excuse for me to talk about some of the big players and big rookies that were at rookie minicamp to get you guys some information on what went down. Plus, I like to get creative and have a little fun with it, as you will soon find out with my losers. So my first winner from rookie minicamp is Drew Sanders. This one is kind of a no-doubter. If you live on the internet at all, you probably saw Drew Sanders' name a bunch during rookie minicamp. He made the biggest play of minicamp when he picked off Ben DiNucci for 6 during a 7-on-7 drill. Now, his athleticism really stood out. The biggest knock people had on Drew Sanders going into the draft was he's not great in coverage. I don't know, Jim. He just had a pick 6. I know it's Ben DiNucci and it's a 7-on-7 non-contact drill, but if you're that big of a liability in coverage, you're probably not getting a pick 6 or multiple pass breakups. Now, a lot of boots-on-the-ground reporters said that he was the biggest star of minicamp, and Sean Payton definitely liked what he saw in the former Arkansas Razorback. Here's what he said. Unfortunately for Ben DiNucci, it was his first interception, and there was more to that interception if you looked at it. It was a good play by Sanders, and it was right in front of Greg Penner. It was a good play by Drew. He had a good break. Now, Denver's inside linebacker room already has its 2 starters in Josey Jewell and Alex Singleton, but I know this is really early. I'm getting really drunk off the Drew Sanders Kool-Aid, but man, it feels like if Drew Sanders was on 31 other teams, he might be starting week 1, but they gave a lot of money to Alex Singleton in free agency. Josey Jewell is on the second year of a 2-year contract. Sanders might not start week 1, but I guarantee you this much. If an injury pops up to one of those 2 starters, which, happened to Josey Jewell last year, and Drew Sanders gets an opportunity to start, something tells me he's one of those players that when he gets the starting job, he's never going to give it back. So watch out for that. But if both Jewell and Singleton stay healthy, Drew Sanders might come on for obvious passing situations, right? Help keep the edge rushers a little bit, fresh and whatnot, some special teams. He'll come on, no doubt about it. Denver's going to find a role for him. But like I said, if an injury pops up and he gets a chance to start in week 2 or week 3 or 4, Drew Sanders will be your starting inside linebacker for the rest of the season. Now, with that being said, who was your favorite pick from this past draft class? I'm going to go with Drew Sanders, but you can honestly make a fair argument for all 5 rookies selected, right? The last pick in their draft might be the first starter of the 5 of them because it's a center, and they don't really have a good one in Lloyd Cushenberry. So let me know who your favorite pick was from this draft class. Let's check out my second winner, and it's Ben DiNucci. He might have been a loser if he did not get a contract from Denver, despite throwing a pick six and being told he might have a future at Walmart. But we talked about this earlier here on the channel, but in case you missed it, Adam Schefter reporting Broncos are signing former XFL standout QB Ben DiNucci after his performance at the team's minicamp. So despite throwing a pick six in front of not just one boss, but your boss's boss, Denver still decided, let's toss this guy a 90-man roster spot. Now, Cecil Lammey from, oh no, that's not the correct, nope. That's okay. We'll get this is the quote we're looking for. Sean Payton had this to say to Ben DiNucci. I told Ben, I said, Greg Penner owns Walmart. If it doesn't work out here, I'm sure there's a greeting opportunity somewhere at one of his local stores. So what an all-time backhanded compliment to get, saying if you don't quite work out as a quarterback, yeah, there are some Walmart stores that would love to have you go, I'm Ben DiNucci. Let me know if I can help you find anything here at your local Walmart. Now, as for the quarterback room, I think it's still going to be a two-quarterback roster. So Ben DiNucci is battling with Jarrett Garantano, who they added late last season, for likely the practice squad position. But if DiNucci looks so good that they don't want to risk losing him on the practice squad, they might stick him on their 53-man roster when it's all said and done. Moving on to our third winner, it is Marvin Mims. You might have had some foreshadowing from that last quote we briefly looked at. So the first selection for Denver in this past draft class is, of course, going to be a winner, right? To be honest, they're all winners. It's rookie minicamp. There's no pads. It's 7-on-7. It's just a lot of drills and getting to know the playbook. He showcased his elite getaway speed. He had a lot of great battles with another third-round pick in Riley Moss. Now, he adds a new element of speed to this wide receiver room that's desperately needed, right? So you have Sutton, you have Patrick. Jeudy's a great route runner, and he's not slow by any stretch. But Marvin Mims, he is a big play machine waiting to happen. Now, this is what Cecil Lammey from Denver Sports said in his write-up after watching Marvin Mims at rookie minicamp. I think Mims could be the best wide receiver on their roster right now. That's no disrespect to any of the veterans on the roster, but none of them have the speed and quicks of Mims. Jerry Jeudy is a better route runner. Courtland Sutton and Tim Patrick have great size. None of these three are the threat Mims is after the catch. And Marvin Mims is a big play machine. He averaged over 20 yards per reception his last 2 years in Norman. But I think it's a bit early to say he's better than Jerry Jeudy, Courtland Sutton, and Tim Patrick, right? Patrick, the last 2 seasons he played, had 11 touchdowns. Marvin Mims, I don't know if he's going to get more than 3 or 4 his rookie season. That might be on the generous side. Now, he could shoot up the wide receiver room, but if not, he's not going to have a ginormous role his rookie season. And this was more or less a pick for the future going, hey, there's a very, very good chance between Jeudy, Sutton, and Patrick, one of those 3 is off our roster in 2024. So when we're here in day 2, yeah, let's go get a pick that's just best player available. And even if he does not contribute a ton this season, we'll like what he can bring to us in the future. So now I want you all to go off what Cecil said. Who do you think will lead the Broncos in receiving? I think it's going to be Jerry Jeudy, but don't sleep on Tim Patrick. The way Sean Payton used his wide receivers in New Orleans with the slant boy Mike Thomas, Tim Patrick could be a good fit for that over the middle. So I don't quite know if we're going to see a lot of deep shots with Marvin Mims after the season Russell Wilson had last year. They might be running the ball a lot and not being super aggressive downfield. So for that reason, I don't know, screw it. I'll go Tim Patrick. Oh, but I am sticking by Jeudy in terms of who my number 1 receiver is on this team, okay? Tim Patrick might lead them in receiving yards, but I still think Jeudy is the number 1 wide receiver on this team. To go back to what Cecil said about Mims being the best wide receiver on this roster, I mean, I get it. It's rookie minicamp. It's fun to, get drunk on all the awesome highlights and whatnot from non-padded practices. We surely did that last year. I mean, go back and read and watch some old videos and read articles from last year's rookie minicamp. Everyone was big on Nathaniel Hackett. Everyone was big on Montrell Washington. Look how that turned out. All right, moving on to our next winner here. That is going to be Riley Moss. I really just wanted an excuse to talk about Denver's top 3 picks in this past draft, and this is my way of doing it. So he was seen in a lot of contested matchups with Marvin Mims. They both had their fair share of wins. Now, Denver traded back into round 3, so there's going to be a decent, high bar for Riley Moss in his first few seasons, knowing this was not just a third-round pick, this was 2 third-round picks. Now, I think he's going to come in and he's going to immediately compete for that CB2 job. Maybe if they like him so much, they move him to slot. But I think they'll probably be content with keeping K'Waun Williams there. When we look at Denver's cornerback room, it's a battle between Riley Moss and Damari Mathis for that outside corner gig. If they decide Surtain, Mathis, and Moss are their 3 best corners, well, Mathis makes probably more sense at the outside. So maybe Moss moves to the slot position. But for now, Riley Moss, he showed what you wanted to see in his rookie minicamp, which is he's not a disaster for some guy who's just coming out there with no pads on running around for a couple hours. My 5th and final winner before we look at the losers is you, Broncos Country. Why? We got our first real taste of Sean Payton, right? Our first real opportunity to go look and see what the new signal caller for the Denver Broncos looks like. And sure enough, here he is, and he is already sporting a visor. He's in peak Sean Payton mode, and he's an all-time football guy. There were a lot of, I shouldn't say great quotes that came out of Sean Payton because he wasn't a big talker, and that's actually going to be a nice segue to our first loser from Broncos minicamp, and that is Broncos media, because it kind of carries over. Sean Payton's in charge now. It's not going to be an open book. This is just the way it's going to operate under Sean Payton. He is not a big fan of going on and on when talking to the media if it's not the offseason and he's not sharing long-winded stories, right? Sean Payton actually is doing so much to encourage players to not speak to the media. He is offering up gift cards, $50 gift card for the most generic answer given to reporters. Like, that is already what he is doing, a Bill Belichick model of brainwashing the rookies, saying you are not going up to the media and running your mouth and giving your opinions and whatnot. You are going to give generic answers. So if you were looking for all-time press conferences from Sean Payton and players, that's probably not going to happen. And as for the media, it's going to be difficult, at least more difficult. They're going to have to dig deep a little bit to find some more stories because it is tight-lipped at Mile High under Sean Payton. So that is our first loser of minicamp. Denver media gets I don't want to say their first because there's been some press conferences and draft stuff, but first on-the-field taste of what it's like to, report on a team led by Sean Payton. My next loser, wide receivers. Again, these are not real losers. It's just maybe they're not glaring winners, okay? The reason why I've got wide receivers lumped into this is an article came out from ESPN where they wrote about a potential trade still in the works for one of their wide receivers. We'll get the wide receiver trade still coming here. So there it is. So ESPN wrote about the Broncos still potentially trading a wide receiver after adding Marvin Mims. Does it increase the possibility or probability of a trade? Maybe by a point or two, but not by a whole lot, right? I still think they're going to hold on to these receivers because they made it through the draft, and if a trade was going to happen, it likely would have been before the draft. But this is what Bill Barnwell from ESPN said. KJ Hamler might not make the team after battling injuries in each of his first 3 pro seasons, but either way, Mims isn't coming in to be the 4th wideout. It wouldn't be a surprise if Courtland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, and Tim Patrick it would be a surprise if those 3 guys were all on the roster ahead of Mims come week 1. So I want to know, will the Broncos end up trading a wide receiver? I don't think so at this point, but hey, if an injury pops up, they're definitely going to be a team that's getting a lot of phone calls. All right, my 3rd and final loser, it's me. It's actually me because I had a take that is not looking all that well, and this is one of those moments where I would love to be proven wrong, and that is Javonte Williams' injury return. So we have an injury update coming from Sean Payton on Javonte Williams. He said he expects Pookie to be back by training camp. And this was a major surprise to me and probably everyone. I mean, even Javonte Williams, I bet when he heard that, he's like, whoa, I got to be back by July, and I'm coming off an ACL, an LCL, and some more ligament tears from October. That's a quick turnaround for a major knee injury. Now, this is what Sean Payton told the media at the start of minicamp about Javonte Williams. I would tell you that we expect him to be ready for the start of training camp, and that's good news. His rehab is going well. I don't want to speak for him or Bo Lowry or anyone else, but we get the daily reports. And look, we're pretty tight-lipped relative to information going out, but I've read a lot, and I think his rehab's going well. So if I'm proven wrong because Javonte Williams comes back 2 months before I thought he might, I will own that, and I'll be happy to own that. I'm still a bit skeptical about Javonte Williams really returning by July. But hey, if it happens, awesome. That's going to do a lot for this team. But I definitely am not holding my breath and banking on Williams even returning week 1. Like, that still feels pretty early for a week 4 injury that when it happened to J.K. Dobbins, it took him 13 months to recover. But no two knees are the same. Okay, will the Broncos trade for a wide receiver? What do you guys think here? What's about to burn up the meal? Sometimes I join the chat, and I have no idea what chaos is happening down there. Now, we've got a mailbag coming up, so let's get the hashtag Broncos and Super Chat, plug on screen for everyone to see. I don't think they're going to end up trading a wide receiver, but you never quite know with Sean Payton. So we do have a mailbag, so if you'd like to get your question on screen, use hashtag Broncos, and producer McCall will pick his favorite questions. If you want to guarantee a spot on screen and you want to show some support for the channel, Super Chats go a really long way to do that. So feel free to use that Super Chat function if you feel so inclined, and then we will put your question on screen for everyone to see to start the mailbag. So keep getting those questions in the chat right now. We need a few more questions to really get this mailbag off the ground. So hashtag Broncos. We got some battles going on right now between the Browns fan base and the Broncos fan base in the chat right now. Hey, it's NFL offseason, baby. This is peak NFL fandom right now, just trolling other fans. So keep getting those questions in, though. Hashtag Broncos or Super Chat. If you Super Chat, we'll throw your question on screen. No problem asked. So, Mr. McCullough, we still need some more questions. What's it looking like? Hashtag Broncos. Okay. You think so? Okay. Well, if you think of a question during the show, you can still use that in the chat, hashtag Broncos in your question, or you can Super Chat, like I said, for, I don't know, the third time, but just to remind everyone, and we'll throw it on screen for everyone. So, Mr. Ramos just asked a question. Eddie Martinez just asked a question. There we go. The Bears asked one. Okay. So, let's jump into a live Broncos mailbag. It is mailbag time here on the channel. I answer the questions you guys had during our live show, which aired at 3 o'clock Mountain Time on Tuesday. So join us for future live Broncos breakdowns to be on other mailbags. Now, our first question comes in from I'm Frey. Does anyone know what number our first round is next year, or is it too early to know? Yeah, that can't be determined until after the season is over. And let's hope it's pick number 32 for Denver's sake. All right, moving on to our next question, though, from Rhett Ladd. Will we get a new kicker? I could see Denver bringing in some more competition for Brandon McManus. It was kind of his worst season of his career. After his rookie season last year for Denver, he's also got not a huge cap hit. He's a kicker. It's not a ginormous contract. But if, like Sam Martin last year, Denver wants to save some money and they think it might not be a big upgrade, but it might be a marginal downgrade, I wouldn't be shocked. Although messing with the kicker position is it's a risky thing to do. Kickers win or lose games way more than we probably give them credit for. So will we get a new kicker? I think there'll be a second kicker at training camp. It'll come down to which one wins the job, though. Humberto Ramos. Is Russ cooking this year? It depends on what he's what kind of cooking we're talking about. He is not on the barbecue. He might be cooking microwave meals. He might be doing, frozen pizzas. But no, I don't think Sean Payton is coming in here and letting Russell Wilson throw it 35 times from the pocket. They're going to get him on the move a lot. I remember last year, Sean Payton, when he was doing TV, was asked, what would you do if you were the Broncos head coach? And he said, I would be giving Russell Wilson, I'd be looking back at all of his previous tapes and finding what he called his best hits, right? And then playing those best hits over and over again. And that is bootlegs, play action, getting Russell Wilson out of the pocket. So if that's the case, yeah, Russell Wilson might not be a, chef, but he's definitely going to be, hopefully, what's the way to put it? Not doing the same type of offense he did last year of just stand in the pocket and pick defenses apart over the middle. That is not Russ's forte. So I'm going to go with Russ being like a DiGiorno pizza chef. That's what I think his role is in 2023. Still good pizza. Broncos, let's ride. Any other free agents you could see the Broncos signing? Good question. Free agency's kind of dried up a little bit, but there's one position group that still has a lot of notable names still on the market, at least while we're filming this live Tuesday. Jadeveon Clowney is an interesting name to keep an eye on. Now, last year with Cleveland, he only had 2 sacks. He had some character-ish issues down the stretch, and he ultimately was more or less not cut, but he was a healthy scratch for the last game of the season after he threw some other people under the bus for things not going well in Cleveland. But the season prior, he was a 9-sack, 11 tackle for loss player. So if Denver believes that they can find that 9-sack player and they look at their defensive line and go, this is a defense that does not have any true pass rushers, yeah, maybe they do decide to add another one to the rotation if they don't feel confident about Randy Gregory's health or Baron Browning being a number 1 edge rusher on this team. So with that being said, pinned comment on today's video. Should the Broncos sign another pass rusher? Do you like the current unit, and do you have faith in the current unit of Baron Browning, Randy Gregory, and Zach Allen, and Nick Bonito, I guess we'll include him, being the top 4 pass rushers? Or do you think they should add a Clowney or another player? Give me your thoughts down in the comment section. This question coming in from the Bronco Kid, and you're yelling at me. What are we going to do to get more QB sacks next year? Okay. Step 1, have Randy Gregory play more than, 6 games last year? That would definitely go a long way. It's a whole new defense coming in with Vance Joseph. It's still going to be a very similar, look and scheme under Vance Joseph. But what are you going to do to get more quarterback sacks next year? Adding Drew Sanders definitely helps. He's got some really good pass rush upside. He had, 10 sacks last year as a do-it-all linebacker for Arkansas. So if you want to bring him in to do some blitz packages, that's going to be, a challenge for offensive lines. But it really comes down to Randy Gregory. You paid the man $70 million. I think 28 of it was guaranteed, so you can get out after 2, maybe 3 seasons. But Randy Gregory was paid top-tier free agency money to be a double-digit sack player. So add that, plus you threw a good amount of money at Zach Allen, who had 5.5 sacks last year with Arizona before having a hand injury cut his season short. Those are 2 big free agency investments. Pair that with Drew Sanders and maybe even Nick Bonito. That is your best recipe for getting after the quarterback. Jace Bear, do you think that Wilson will turn things around with Sean Payton? To reuse some of the things I said earlier when talking about letting Russ cook, I think Sean Payton's got a much better plan than Hackett did for maximizing number 3, right? Hackett came in there and said, let's do what I did with Aaron Rodgers that won him back-to-back MVPs. And that's not a horrible thought to have on the surface, but Russell Wilson and Aaron Rodgers are very different quarterbacks, and their success stems from very different trees, right? Russell Wilson, like I said, is a lot more of a play-action, bootleg-type quarterback. Aaron Rodgers can stand in the pocket and throw darts and pick a defense apart. That's not really what Russell Wilson's forte is. So Sean Payton is going to create a much better plan for Russ to be successful, but there were just moments last year where it didn't matter who was the play caller. It didn't matter if it was Hackett, if it was Bill Belichick or Sean Payton on the sideline. Russell Wilson missed KJ Hamler wide open in the end zone against the Colts to win the game. So sometimes it doesn't really matter. If you can't get the play done, you can't execute. I think we're going to find out if Russell Wilson is 90% of what he was in Seattle, 95, or more like 80. But Sean Payton is definitely going to get the best out of Russ. I just don't know what Russell Wilson's best is anymore. Now, before we get to the rest of the questions on today's show, make sure to subscribe if you have not already. This is the YouTube cliche portion of the show. But in all honesty, if you're looking for a Broncos YouTube channel for the entire offseason, we're going to keep you guys informed and entertained like we like to say here. So subscribe if you have not already. This next question coming in from Eddie Martinez. What's the chance that Javonte Williams will have a big bounce back season? He's coming off a knee injury that it took J.K. Dobbins quite some time. I mean, those are the two most parallel knee injuries where it wasn't just an ACL tear. You had the LCL and you had some more, unfortunately. So for J.K. Dobbins, he tore it in the preseason of 2021. 2020, excuse me. And then he missed all that season. No, 2021, whatever. I'm getting lost in the years. But the point is, J.K. Dobbins took 13 months to return. He missed the first 2 games of the season last year. And then when he returned, he actually missed more time afterwards getting a second knee surgery. So I hate to, be the party pooper here, but I would be very unshocked if Javonte Williams has a mediocre season back, as like Saquon Barkley, his first year back from the ACL tear, which happened early in the season. The next season for Saquon was not really a season to remember. So prepare for the worst. But Javonte Williams was picked early in the draft because of great athleticism. So if anyone's strong enough to overcome an injury like this sooner rather than later, it's probably Javonte. Jackson Nicholson, what's going on? Will Alex Forsyth be a starter by week 1? It's going to be open season in training camp at the center position. Lloyd Cushenberry will be your week 1 starter, will be your starter training camp day 1. Does he hold on to that spot during training camp? It's hard to say right now because we got to watch training camp. But if Alex Forsyth has a good training camp, don't be shocked if they make a move. I know Sean Payton spoke highly of Cushenberry and said he's our starting center. We got to see him work with the other guys. And maybe for Cushenberry, he'll thrive a lot more when he's next to Ben Powers and, Quinn Miners compared to last year, a bit of a rotation even when he was healthy. So for that reason, I'm going to say Cushenberry holds on to the starting job. But it might be one of those cases where if he gets injured and someone else gets to take over for a short time, Alex Forsyth impresses during that short time, it might be his job to lose at that point. Mile High Sean, I still think we should sign Zeke just in case Williams isn't 100% healthy early on. Thoughts? Okay. Zeke is definitely going to help a lot for Denver in spots that they do need help in, right? I don't think Javonte Williams was ever a fantastic goal line back. Just look at the Seahawks game last year. So Zeke can step in here and he can be that goal line back for Denver, right? Samaje Perine was okay with that role in Cincinnati, but he was more of a change of pace back at times. So he's definitely stepping into a new role if he is the bell cow back week 1. I think this team could stand to add another running back. Now, having said all that, Sean Payton did say Javonte Williams will be back for camp. If July rolls around and Javonte Williams starts on the PUP list and the doctors tell Sean Payton it ain't going to be another week or two, it might be another month or two, maybe they decide let's go add Zeke or some other running back still on the open market, because I don't know if Samaje Perine is ready to be a true bell cow back that gets 25 carries a game. So I'm not opposed to adding Zeke for pass protection and goal line situations. Even though he's a bit washed, he doesn't have that true speed he once had. You don't need a ton of speed at the goal line or in pass protection, and Zeke still excels in those areas. So what do you guys think? Should the Broncos sign Zeke? S for sign or P for pass? Give me your take. Give me your thoughts down in the comment section. Eddie Martinez, how many years and touchdowns will Marvin Mims have? How many yards and touchdowns will Marvin Mims have? I'm going to be a little bit more, pump the brakes here. He's wide receiver 4 currently. Maybe he shoots up the depth chart. If injuries happen, that's going to change things. But if the other three guys are healthy and are on this team week one, Marvin Mims is probably going to be a 400-yard, 450-yard, 2-touchdown player his rookie season, just because he's not going to get a ton of snaps and targets as the wide receiver 4. He'll definitely have some of those, takeover games where he goes off for 100, kind of like Mecole Hardman did for the Chiefs, 112 yards and a score. But then the next 2 weeks, it'll be 10 yards and 20 yards, and that's about it. So put me down for 450 and 2 or 3 touchdowns. If he moves up the depth chart, that'll change things. But for now, I think he's going to be wide receiver 4, barring any trades or injuries. Last question coming in from Caden Dees. Do you think we should move on from Randy Gregory because he can't stay healthy and get a better top-tier pass rusher? We should have kept Bradley Chubb and traded Gregory. You really can't trade Randy Gregory just after, you can't trade him last year midseason. You just signed him to a 5-year contract. I know that happened to Yannick Ngakoue, but it was not going to happen with Randy Gregory. George Paton did not want to just, raise the white flag and admit he made a $70 million mistake like that. Could you trade Randy Gregory after this upcoming season? Yeah, if he has a bad year. If he has a bad year, I don't know many people that are going to be lining up to take on the next 3 years of his contract, so he might be a cut altogether. But should they move on from Randy Gregory? Hey, this is a major season for Gregory. Number 5 has to play majority of the games, which I know is asking a lot, but has to be available. Injuries suck. But unfortunately, this is the NFL, the not-for-long business. And if you cannot be available and you cannot play, you will not have a spot on a roster for very long. So he needs to be available. Some of those things are out of his control, and that's a big bummer. But when he did play last year, him and Bradley Chubb were a wrecking crew to start the season. Remember the first few games, like him and Chubb, the forced fumbles and the sacks and whatnot? So I like Gregory if he's healthy. I just have to see that, and I haven't seen it yet. That's going to do it for us on today's live show. Appreciate everyone for tuning into this mailbag here. Make sure to subscribe if you have not already. Okay, should the Broncos sign Zeke? What do you guys think? We got 124 people hanging out with us still. S for sign, P for pass. Let me know what your thoughts are here. Now, before we get to the next phase of the show, which would be the sign-off portion, unfortunately, if we get a super chat, we get to continue to hold on to the studio space. That's just sort of the bylaws of Chat Sports. But if not, we do have to sign off so another channel can come in here and film their videos or film their live shows. But if you get a super chat, you get to hold on to the studio. So if you like the show you're watching right now and you're looking for some more ways than just liking the video and commenting to support it, super chats go a long way. Now, question coming in from Jay Spare, which we'll answer as, we see if we get a super chat or not. But which tight end will be the starter for the Broncos? It'll be Greg Dulcich. They signed Chris Manhertz, if you remember, in free agency. He's a blocking tight end. He's Eric Tomlinson from last season. Albert O, I think he'll either get cut or traded. Remember, they traded for Adam Trautman from the Saints during the draft. Most teams carry 3 tight ends. If they carry 4, then Albert O will have a spot. But Albert O can't even lie and say he's a tight end fullback. That's why he was, more or less a healthy scratch last year. He couldn't block for shit. And if you can't block for shit, you're not a fullback. So if it's, Dulcich, Manhertz, and Trautman as your top 3 tight ends, Albert O could be one of those trade candidates, kind of like Sony Michel, where, hey, an injury popped up to our starter. Who can we get right now? Oh, Albert O? He's better than our tight end 3 or 4, so yeah, let's make a move. So keep an eye on Albert O potentially getting traded if an injury occurs during training camp and whatnot. Caden Dees, what's going on? Who do you think will be the starter for safety as well as punt returner? I think the next video I have to do is projecting the 53-man roster, because that's really what you guys are looking for here. Starting safety, I think it'll be K-Jack and Justin Simmons. Now, maybe Caden Stearns, if he's healthy, can crack that starting role. I like Caden Stearns a lot as a player. He just has to be healthy, and he's coming off a season when he only played 5 games and had a season-ending hip injury. Don't sleep on J.L. Skinner. J.L. Skinner is going to be if he balls out in preseason games, which I think he might when he's playing against backups and backups, he could make a case to be a starter next to Justin Simmons. As for punt returner, that's a good question because don't know if it's going to be Montreal Washington. I don't even know if Montreal Washington makes this team, to be frankly honest with you. Right? Can we throw the wide receiver depth chart on really quickly, Mr. McCullough? Thank you. Because we're going to run through the wide receivers here, and let's count them out. Let's figure out who's making this 53-man roster. Now, last year you had Tim Patrick go on IR, and that opened up a roster spot. But if everyone's healthy, Jeudy, Sutton, Patrick, and Mims are all roster locks. I think Marquez Callaway is kind of a lock. They added him in free agency. They want to see him on this roster. So now we're at 5 guys right there. It's up to Hamler, Montreal Washington, Lil Jordan Humphrey, Kendall Hinton, Brandon Johnson, Jalen Virgil, all players who have made a 53-man roster before, to compete for the last wide receiver spot or 2. So it is up for grabs. That's going to be a very fun training camp battle like it was last year, especially if there's no more injuries this season. It's only going to be a battle for 1-2 spots max. All right, last question here. Unless we get a super chat, then we will have to sign off. Will the Broncos put the smacking on the Browns? I don't think they'll put the smacking on the Browns. Cleveland's one of my under-the-radar teams in 2023. They won 7 games last year, but they're adding Zadarius Smith in May just because they want to, right? This defense for Cleveland's going to be pretty good. If Deshaun Watson looks like the Deshaun Watson we watched last year, then the Browns might not be a very tough team. But if Deshaun Watson looks like the Deshaun Watson we all watched in the Houston Texans, this Browns team is going to be a very difficult team to play. So ball's in Watson's court. I think he's more likely to return to that Houston Texan form than not. But if his struggles continue like they did last year when he played 6 games, yeah, every team's going to have their fair chance of beating Cleveland. But if I had to pick right now, I think he's going to get back to the Houston side, and it won't be an easy game for any team playing Cleveland, let alone Denver. Okay, that is it going for today's show. I appreciate everyone for tuning in, making us a part of your Tuesday. For producer Matthew McCullough and I, we're going to sign off, and we'll see everyone later.